All right, hello everybody, and welcome to another Q&A corner here on Twitch. My name's Andrew. I am so excited to be with you today with a very special guest, our final guest of the week, Yamila Franco. This couldn't be a better way to end the week. I've been lucky enough to get a chance to work with Yamila over the years, and every single time that we connect, it's always amazing and inspiring, and so I'm incredibly thrilled that we're getting to share that with you today. And I'm going to introduce you to Yamila in just a minute, but if you're here on the stream or you're watching the stream and you have no idea what's going on, I want to give you a rundown on where you are and where you happened to end up. You're here on Q&A Corner, presented by High Tech U, an initiative of the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the University of Victoria. These are interactive industry interviews and your opportunity to connect with the folks that are making innovations and changes across Canada, across British Columbia, across the world. And this is your opportunity to connect with them. So as we're going through, we've got our chat on that side or down below if you're here on Twitch. If you're catching this on YouTube, I'm sorry, but you still got comments below, and I'll make sure that they get to Jamila after the stream today. But with all of that said, you're not here to see me. You are here to see our guest of the hour, co-founder of Afro Hub Market and Nyoka Design Labs. I'm going to bring her up on the screen. Oh, there we go. And Yamila, welcome to Q&A Corner. All right, I wonder if you're able to. There we go. Hey,
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for that introduction, Andrew. Super happy to be connecting. And I don't know how many people are watching or listening, but this is such a great opportunity. I'm happy that you've been exposed and learning from so many different leaders as well, because it's one way of knowing what is possible and what is going on out there. So kudos to everybody who's connecting and listening right now as well.
Oh, look at that. What a great way to start this off. This is like, I gotta say, Yamila, the energy that you bring to anywhere that you are is spectacular, and it's very seldom that I meet somebody that can match my energy, like, on a screen, but you are putting me to shame right now. So I am so happy. This is a great way to end a Friday, and we'll get some energy in our viewers as well. So thank you so much for being here. Super excited. I guess to start off the first question, it's a pretty generic one, but we'll jump right in. And while you're answering, I'll switch over onto the screen and make sure all the stream stuff is working. But maybe just because you've got a pretty amazing story, how did you end up from sort of where you began to your current life as a co-founder of not one, but two pretty spectacular startups? And I know there's lots of other things that you've got going on right now.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. So I'm trying to think about the process and the series of events, but it all started really. I came as an international student to UVic. I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic, come from a family that is very entrepreneurial. My dad owns pharmacies named after me. My mom owned her marketing company. Grandparents own an accounting firm. The other grandpa worked, as a doctor with so many uncles. So everybody is a hustler in the family. And that's how I was raised. That's how I was, with this idea of, sure, we have our jobs and we are going to school and we're learning, but I was raised by asking questions. How can we implement the knowledge that we bring fully into the table, into our projects or our different endeavors? So coming to UVic, I was studying biology, and it was really nice. I was enjoying it. I started volunteering, and that really opened so many doors. But I knew that I had found a lot of love in creating, and also in going outside of the box a little bit. In fact, I will get too bored if I was just doing the same thing over and over, or if I found myself working in just one project or in one position for too long. Now, the reality about business is that you don't necessarily get to do just the one thing you love. I know that there's a big push for people to say follow your passion and do what you love, but that's not necessarily how it truly works in business. And so for me, it took this whole journey where when I was at UVic in my final year, of science, I ended up learning about how money worked, ended up learning about finances, even became a licensed financial advisor. And I was like, well, if I understand money, then I can understand other areas that are linked to it, such as budgeting and investments. A business itself was a way of investing. And so when I met my co-founder for my first business, Nyoka, she was a full-on scientist, and she had great ideas of how she wanted to change the world and reduce plastic waste. And then for me, you had a hustler. So I thought, well, if you bring the science and the knowledge that I certainly don't have, even though I have a degree, then I can bring in the business and I can bring the investor mindset and working with people, and we can build a legacy this way. So that's how it started with Nyoka. And my transition was really more also out of need, because as an entrepreneur and coming from my family, one of the reasons why I immigrated to Canada was because I wanted to provide my family with a better lifestyle. And so when I saw myself long-term thinking future, I would just ask myself, like, well, what job can I have that's going to allow me to provide for my family and bring them over to Canada and not have them struggle without getting in debt, etc. Until building equity through a business seemed like the most attractive route for me at that moment.
So then even so you've ended up in sort of an entrepreneurial world, and it was sort of where you came from. Do you see it as like a nature versus nurture thing? Like, were you always going to end up being an entrepreneur, or was it something that like you through mentorship and through others, or kind of seeing the value there specifically, that it ended up there? And I mean, that's maybe a little bit of a broad question, nature versus nurture, but I'm curious, even though you've identified it now, did you see yourself as this business owner all along?
Oh no, I didn't even envision, like, even money was like a weird thing for me where I just didn't even know how I was going to make money. But I think coming from a place where, imagine, I had left everything back home before coming to Canada. So I was already starting from zero. So even quitting my job, which I love at the moment, even quitting was just like, well, I'm just gonna go back to zero, which is where I really started from anyway. So it's not like I'm leaving my identity and shedding so much skin, because a lot of people get attached to what they're doing because they don't know anything else as well. And it's like it's because we're comfortable with that. I was already uncomfortable. So it was easy for me to just say, well, let me try something different, but never in my dreams. And going back to mentorship, I've been built entirely through mentorship, entirely through working with advisors and people that I've been able to meet throughout the years. And that stuck with me because I would have never said, like, when I started, like, oh, I'm going to do $1 million in sales. Or, oh, my company, we're going to divert this many tons of plastic from the ocean because we can. I will never even speak that way. And even just working with mentorship and putting myself in spaces where I was exposed to people who will think that way and who would act that way, it was kind of like me learning through osmosis. But it had to be, at that moment, it had to be more of a full-time job. And unfortunately, I took the hard route towards building a business where I just quit everything and I took away my stable stream of income. And I was like, I either make it or I make it, because I just don't have a choice.
That's interesting too, because we've had a lot of entrepreneurs that are on here that are like building their business while also doing something else, so it gives them that safety net. So that's but I think that also speaks to your journey, as you said, sort of you're coming to it from a really unique place already, which I think is very cool. So how is that? So how do you get to that point then? And then I'll jump over to the chat for some questions. How did you get to the point of being able to like know that it was time to walk away from where you were? Like, what was that process like for you? Was it just, you know what, I really have to do this, and then you just kind of said, like, I'm sorry, I'm going to start my own business? Or did you just wake up one day and say, I'm out?
Yeah, so it was very much linked to my immigration process at that moment. So my pressure came from knowing that my parents were getting older and that I was here in Canada having a blast and having the time of my life. And very soon, I would see my brother growing up, and imagine, like, international student tuition, super expensive. I came here because I had a scholarship. Even with our family business, we can't afford Canadian university with international tuition fees and less US. But I have my brother that I knew, like, oh, I want to bring my brother to a safe space. I want to learn. So it really came from a sense of responsibility where I gave myself a year. I knew that I had to work for a year to get my all of my legal documents, getting my permanent residency. And it was a very awkward process because I didn't know how to articulate it and I was really super afraid. I was like, I did not plan it properly, but I was more afraid of staying in a position of comfort than actually taking a risk. It was like, you know, when you dream, you're like, oh, do you imagine the life that you could have had? Kind of like in movies, you know, La La Land.
Totally.
Totally afraid of facing a moment like that at the end of the movie where I'm like, oh, I didn't take the leap or I didn't go out with the person. So now I'm 50 and something happened. I don't know.
No, that's so true. So I'm really so I gotta say I want to go. So it's Q&A corner has gone down some like less intense roads. I always ask some difficult questions, but I think you've got this amazing perspective that I really want to explore. And even before we go to the chat, which I really do want to do, but recognizing that I'm really coming to this, and I come to High Tech U and to what we're doing here and to the tech industry really from a very privileged place. I'm a cis straight white male. I am like the archetype of somebody that's like interested or like into the tech sector. I have glasses. I'm kind of nerdy. Like I fit those pieces. But the journey that you've gone through is one that's very unique. Like as both immigrant to Canada, a women in STEM. Like obviously, this is I didn't realize until this Monday. Like this is International Women in STEM Week. Like Monday was International Women's Day. So there's a lot of different. I don't want to say struggles, but it's such a unique journey. And I'm curious, like, what have you found to be the, like, maybe the rose and the thorn in that situation? So the things that maybe prepared you better for that other people aren't necessarily prepared for, and then maybe some things that have been made more challenging through that process, I guess.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about that right now, and it's so interesting because when I go back to starting in business, I know that there are so many barriers. There's systemic barriers, there's financial barriers. For me, the hardest was really financial because even so I say I quit my job, but I still was doing things on the side. Like I had just very much part-time work and I was licensed in the financial industry, so I could just work with clients whenever I could fit that in, so I could make money, then reinvest it in a company. And so I don't think people really deal well with that lack of certainty, but sometimes you just don't have a choice. So again, I think I went back to I don't have a choice. So I really became aware about even barriers and this whole conversation about uh, the lack of inclusion in tech and STEM. I became aware of that when I came to Canada. So that's something very interesting where if you go back to Dominican Republic, you have, I think, more women engineers graduating than men. You have more women going through the medical program. In fact, they do better because they just study so well
Yeah, fair
and
enough.
super high grades. And so I come here and I'm just like, what do you mean the engineering department is like mostly men? Like, are you kidding me? Like, what's the fun in that? You know? And so it was so interesting where I'm very certain that I was in situations where I wasn't being treated maybe fairly or where that I know I have stories of times where I just don't feel comfortable, but it is so easy for me to just walk away from that because my focus was so centered that it didn't matter if somebody treated me differently or if somebody didn't open a door for me. It was more of this door didn't open, I'm going to go to the next one. It's like pitching in competitions. And I also didn't come from this understanding of I need to understand everything before I do something. Because if I had tried to understand everything, I would have been in those very discouraging spaces. And then I don't think I would have quit, but it would have been way harder for me. But from the beginning, I kind of just hang out with the people that I like, and that has really worked in my favor too. So the people that were helping me from the beginning were people that believed in my vision and in my mission too, and they just started opening doors. And so I was telling somebody last week, I was like, well, you know, they asked me like, oh, it's such an industry that's male dominant. And I was like, I don't even see men because I always spend time with women and, women entrepreneurial cohorts and CEO groups, and it's all very balanced. And I'm always hanging out with indigenous people, and it was what I was looking for because I needed to thrive, and I got very lucky that I had people directing me in those directions from the beginning.
So do you think that there is like those community, like what you're saying is these communities exist, you just need to know how to find them, right?
Yeah, find them is hard, but once you get in, it's kind of like that's why I tell people, "Ew, if you want to go into business, I'll refer you, I'll connect you, I'll open as many doors as I can because I'm here now."
Yeah, so how did you do that? Like how did you find these people? Because like you're saying, you like, because what year did you start your degree at UVic?
It was 2013, September.
So like 2013, so less than 10 years. Now you've got multiple businesses that are here. That's a lot of doors and a lot of people. How did you find those communities that you were able to use for folks that are maybe on the stream and are like, I want to start this process now?
I was really bad at first at asking for help and asking for what I was specifically looking for because I just didn't even know what I was looking for. So I had to get really good at asking for what I needed. And even if what I needed at that point is not even what was going to help me in the business, it was a skill that I was honing because right now I know that when I look back, I'm like, oh gosh, I tried talking to somebody or to 10 people, 20, 30 people in my business, and nobody was interested. And for some reason, they don't get what I do. So they keep asking me questions and I don't know how to explain it. But I was really bad at first, which I'm so grateful I didn't give up at that moment because now I can pitch and now I can explain what is it I do. That being said, it really became this whole process of not being afraid to ask and to go out and meet people and to check in. And then you might say, like, oh, but I'm shy, but what do I do? Sending messages, even sending messages and asking, hey, do you know somebody who works in the space, or who do you know that does this or that, or I'm interested in learning this. And honestly, also I think that there's such a big pressure from, I don't know if it's like the social media movement and the space and society, where maybe people are expected to act a certain way or look a certain way or be. But I show up in spaces and I'm like, I don't really know the science, but I can tell you how to run a business, and I get a co-founder that can do the science. So I really own the parts that I don't know, but because whoever runs a business knows that you can work with somebody else to bring that skill and that level of expertise in the table. I don't need to own everything.
Yeah, that's so true, I think. And knowing what you, it's as important to know what you know as what you don't know and recognize that.
Yeah.
So what, okay, so this is a thing that we actually haven't had a lot of people talk about, and you've mentioned it twice, so I want to maybe dig in a little bit deeper into this idea of like pitching, and you're talking about money. It's not something that people talk about. Like people don't really talk about what the but you're a financial planner, like you have that background. So I'm curious, like you've started two businesses. How are they funded? Like, are they bootstrapped? Are they venture backed? Are you getting grants from the government? What does that actually look like to build a business, especially if you are building it from the ground up?
Yeah, it's very expensive. It depends on what business structure you're looking at. So, two of the business I have are corporations. And then my financial advising practice, I run it with independent contractors. So what that means is I don't have expenses in terms of employment, and it's the most accessible way to even start a business for me at that moment because I didn't have to pay for salary or anything. So I'm going to divide how the financing work, but everything has been bootstrapped up to this point. With Nyoka, which is heavily, financing requiring, is very expensive because it is tech and it's also biotech. So it requires research and development. And then we have a lab. And so Paige and I, Paige is my co-founder, we were bootstrapping as much as we could. And that's actually our website. We were bootstrapping as much as we could and getting as much support as we could. So, for example, think about starting a business and we're prototyping. Maybe people will be like, I'm going to buy a 3D printer. Well, we didn't buy a 3D printer. We went to a maker space and we found places where we could then use the equipment that we needed to prototype and get the first version of a product out until we could go out and pitch. And then we still want to, we really fight, and we're still fighting. We want to keep ownership of the company. So we went the government funding route, and we figured that out. And we were able to hire our first set of our team members through government funding and through the support that we were getting there. And it took me a lot of, like, I spent months trying to understand and read. And then it sort of clicked for me that I needed to really focus, because I was trying to learn again, going back to trying to understand everything and trying to learn. And I'm just like, well, if I need to hire 3 people, let me just go with these 3 grants, and I'll go with those 3 and I'll start from there. No, it doesn't even have to be huge. So, and most recently, we did take now our first round of investments, where we've now gotten about $600,000 Canadian. And our intention is to reach $1 million raised this year. I'm pretty much leaning towards the other 400,000 to be non-dilutive, meaning, from grant funding, government, etc. And so
Is that your so for those that are out there that are watching the stream that maybe don't understand, is that what is that like pre-seed, so like the angel investment stage, or like what does this look like? Because that language gets used a lot, and certainly teens that are on here have probably heard about like angel investors and stuff, but what kind of funding was this?
Okay, so it was venture capital, and it will technically fall under like a seed round or pre-seed and seed. And the reason I don't have a very clear answer is because I've heard it being used differently in different contexts. So I'm like, are they like Silicon Valley type of like conversations, or so? I always just go like, you know what, we got this investment and we're using this money, and ideally I just won't have to raise, because we're gonna be sustainable and we'll be able to scale up.
Totally. Yeah, sorry. And I'm just curious. And you know what? I kind of love to hear that from a founder who's raising this money, that it's like, I don't really care what round it is. I don't care what it's called. I care that there's money that helps us grow the business. That's what's important.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, oh, I didn't have to understand. It goes back to that. I really want to nail. I don't know why I keep going back to that idea, because I feel even in university, when I think back about how I was such a great student, I would get A's, I would learn everything. And in reality, when it came to running a business, it was more about being resourceful than about everything I knew or I could bring. I mean, put somebody in a moment of pressure, and do we even remember everything we know? We just make worse decisions.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I feel like that's a big piece. But to hear it from somebody, I think for those that are on the chat and in the stream, like, you're hearing it straight from somebody who's building a business. You don't need to know everything. You just need to be scrappy and to be able to go out there and figure it out. So before we kind of keep chatting, which is amazing, if you're here in the chat, this is an interactive industry interview. So if you're watching the stream, there's lots of ways to get your questions to us. You can throw them in the stream chat. You can send us an email. There's a form on the website. You can shout into the ether. You can like try and telekinetically like pass it through to us. There is lots of ways that you can get your questions through. So please throw your questions out there, and we're here. We want to be able to answer them for you. But I'm curious in terms of the multiple businesses piece, because so many people would only, if they would be like, I'm going to do one business and I'm going to do it really well. But you have now co-founded 2 businesses. How do you manage that? How do you take on the extra challenge of not only running one, but 2 sort of very startup-y businesses?
Well, I think I'm not necessarily in either business. When I look at what I really do, is that I'm in the business of building teams. And so that's something that I've been really working hard to figure out so I can duplicate it. And what I've come to understand is that I can be in any industry. And if I know how to bring people together and figure out a clear action plan, having a vision, a mission that motivates and inspires, people will want to work towards a common goal, and people want to have meaningful things to do. So that's what really took me to social impact. Because if I'm working on AfroHub, then we have a team. My challenge right now is, okay, well, how do I work with the rest of the team so that everybody's aligned, so we all have a goal? But keyword here is team, because I'm not doing everything, and I don't want to be doing everything either. So maybe, for an investor, or somebody, you might even question yourself like, oh, how can you do it? I still play video games. Like I just downloaded Luigi's Mansion 3 last night, and I can't wait to go and play that this evening. So it's about working with people. And I really had to learn to be patient, because if it was for me, I'm a trailblazer. Like I will literally grab something and do it myself, but is that going to be scalable? And that's where I'm like, what am I doing? Well, originally I was kind of very naive. And what I really wanted was, I was like, oh, passive income. It's going to be so great. Now it's like, I really want to have an impact, and money just comes along the way, because when you're focusing on impact and on helping, money just comes. And so I've even shifted my perspective. And so when it came to focusing on what I want to give back to the world, then people starting to come and wanting to work with me. And I started passing on stuff that I realized I'm not going to go to school for engineering. So I might as well get the help from an engineer in building a product.
Yeah, that's so. I mean, that's super, super true. And I think on the other, I think on the other side, what's really interesting in there is recognizing that your role is to bring teams together. Like that's so true. It's not about the product even, it's about the experience that's being created from it, right? Like that's what people are buying, that's what you're selling, that's how you need to do it. So so where does social enterprise, where does that kind of a concept come into this whole conversation? Because I think when a lot of people think social enterprise, they think like a nonprofit running a coffee shop out of their youth center and they employ youth. So has social enterprise, does it mean something different to you? Yeah, I'm just kind of curious on your take on social enterprise.
Honestly, when it comes to social enterprises, I really like to think about impact, and it goes back to a business that is deliberately. I'm not. I'm gonna take up business. Oh, I think I'm frozen. I'm gonna wait to come back. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, you're good.
So when I think about social enterprises, I look at operations or a common goal, a common group of people working towards having some form of positive impact, where our decisions are not taking only ourselves into account, but really taking and asking questions like who is benefiting from this, who is not benefiting from this, and how can I make sure that this brings and gives back more good than the harm it's causing. That's a simpler way of breaking it down. And so when it comes to business, doesn't necessarily have to be a nonprofit model. I look at financial sustainability. Can I do good, and can I sustainably do good so that it is long lasting? If I'm going to be taking plastic out of the environment or building a product that can replace billions of tons of plastic, am I doing it for long enough for me to see that change? And so the question now it comes, so how do we use that money that we get, and how do we make sure that our process is indeed not just causing more harm? Because am I going to build a product that reduces plastic but cause a bunch of waste in the process? And that's what I also see happening to a lot of businesses. So being and even claiming like, oh, I run a social enterprise, is because we've taken the intentionality and the time to ask ourselves every step along the way, who are we impacting? How can we make sure our impact is actually positive, or that is not causing more harm to the environment, the people that we're related with? And I think that goes back to even grounding ourselves as people, as humans, as part of this world as well.
Is muted. Yeah, I think that's so such an awesome take on what social enterprise could be and should be, in like a really meaningful way. By the way, I meant to say, congratulations on landing $600,000. That's so incredible. Wow. How did you find the process of pitching to those, like, because this is pitching to people that can give you money? Did you find it super intimidating, or did you just kind of get into a rhythm and then people just saw the value and then threw money at you? What was the actual process of convincing people to give you that kind of money like?
I actually didn't really oh, 1 second. I am in a meeting. Okay, that was Patrick. It's the perks about working from home.
Yeah.
He was in the living room, so I came to the kitchen. The living room also has the office, so. So this is what happened, and basically, I didn't stress a lot about it because I realized that if I told my story enough times, there'd be people that would want to support us, and it wasn't just me; it was also Paige. And so what ended up happening is that the years of meeting people and networking and connecting, they ended up adding up to us eventually sitting in front of or landing with people from Indie Bio. I'm actually wearing their shirt right now,
Oh,
which
very
is
cool.
an accelerator program, and they're based in the US. And so they also invest in businesses that they want to support, that they see as have innovations, can potentially bring a product that can have a great impact in the market. And they were really interested just in the vision itself. So it really made it easy because I was pitching and I've been pitching for years now. So I had more meetings with investors and funds and stuff. But at the end of the day, we just ended up going with the first person who knew us before we even knew how to pitch because they believe in our vision. So I know that people talk like, oh, fundraising, it can be so stressful. Honestly, it goes down to who you know and asking those right questions. People will give you advice. They're like, oh, when you pitch, do it this way. Then you go to somebody else and they're like, you need to show this when you pitch. So can you plant your flag and say, I want to build a business that is this way, and these are the values that I'm going to bring with my business or my organization, and then say, will you support it or not? And I think I took that because I started to see the value that I could bring to the table as well.
That's so cool. So you talk about an interesting thing. You're talking about accelerators. I'm sure there's folks on the stream. This is probably one of the nicest interviews that we've done in a while because you're like literally touching on every single one of these concepts that like are super important and relevant and we get questions about. So what is an accelerator? Have you gone through accelerators before? What does that look like for you as a company? So if there's somebody out there that's like, oh, I want to go and do this accelerator program, like, what's that experience like?
Yeah, so is I actually I love accelerator programs because I didn't go to university for business. And so what this program does is that it brings people together, people that are building businesses at different stages. Some accelerators are literally, I think that's what they're called, like that. They're meant to accelerate your growth and your growth as an entrepreneur, but also your growth in business, your business growth. So if you're facing a challenge of like, I'm having some sales, but I don't really know how to reach out to more people with my product or with the service that I want to provide, you can go, you can apply, and they can put you in front of people that are more likely to help you solve that problem. And they can help facilitate those connections as well with people that will be really good at helping you solve that problem. Yeah, and I think that's why I did really well because at first I went to an incubator program, which a lot of people recommend before an accelerator. And it's a smaller thing. It's more like going to business class and you're learning what is a business plan, what is your business model. You're learning the language. It's like taking baby steps. And so I do see a lot of people come into business classes or workshops and they get intimidated, and it's just because it's a whole different topic, it's a whole different language. It's literally like going to university when you're building a business. And so I would always say it's like, oh, every day I'm getting better and better. I don't understand what's going on, but I'm sitting here and I know that at some point it has to click in if I just give myself the chance to figure this out. And I think it goes back to, a lot of people don't want to admit that they suck at something. And I was like, I really don't know what's happening. I don't know what this means. I don't know what that is. I need help. I don't know how to make it work, but I want to make it work. Can you help me? Some people will be like, yes. Some people will be like, yes, I'll sit down. And I've had mentors and advisors that have stuck with me for throughout the years, and they've seen me grow. They've seen me understand, and they put time. I value that.
So you're talking about incubators and that idea of like learning the basics. What incubator program did you go through?
I did Project Zero, and
Okay.
that's actually based in Victoria, and it's done by Synergy. So that's for circular economy businesses. And I don't know if we have anything there. We might have their logo somewhere, but you can find Project Zero Incubator. So what they really focus is on advancing businesses that follow a circular economy model or that are developing and bringing it into their business. And what that is basically figuring out ways that we can eliminate waste out of our systems. So when you look at even plastic waste, it goes back to asking those questions of where do we create waste from the process our product is being made to when it's being delivered to the clients. And so instead of a linear economy, which is what we're used to, you buy something from a supermarket, you take out the plastic packaging, you eat it, you throw everything out. It's looking at how can I would use that packaging back into the economy. And so that's our vision for Nyoka. We really want it to be a truly circular economy design hub. We want to be able to bring more people and give them tools so they can also create solutions to problems.
So, and maybe that's like a good segue because I don't think that I asked earlier, like for you to kind of introduce folks that are on the stream to the two companies and what they do. So we've been talking a lot about science and entrepreneurship, but what exactly does, well, I guess like starting with Nyoka, like what is it? Like what do you guys do there?
Where we started and where we're going, but we basically started with the mission or the vision of replacing all single-use plastic glow sticks. And we knew that they would cause so much waste if you go to a music festival, if you go to events. And that's actually her first invention, Nyoka Light Wand. And so it was this beautiful idea. Can we create technology that instead of just adding more waste, it can be regenerative for the earth? And regenerative, means simply that as it degrades, it gives back. It just doesn't cause more waste, but it actually gives back nutrients, for example. So that's where
Very
we
cool.
started. Fast forward right now, we are shaping our company to really be the people. Like we are the people who make our company, and our mission is to be a design hub. Call it, if you like engineering, if you like creating, if you like art. My vision is for it to be a place where people can come on board and they can solve problems by bringing their own unique skills, and we will just provide tools for technology to be built and for advancing a circular economy.
So is this then
But
kind of the reimagining of like a makerspace, but for a very specific purpose then?
yeah, reimagine a makerspace, but for clean technology. Clean technology, it's all technology can be clean, but it goes back to reducing waste, reducing toxicity. This is one of our products. I'll send you a link so you can even open it. But our newest product is called the Lumis. This is how it looks like.
There we
Let me
go.
see. So that's our website. I just sent it to you in the chat. And
Awesome.
so with this product specifically is more of we're still working on our light one, the original product. We want it to be fully compostable, and we said, well, people are asking for something that's more sustainable, something that's still plastic free and that they can use in different ways. And we came up with this plastic free beautiful glow in the dark wristband. And so going back to when events open up, if you have a party, if you're going outdoors, if you're biking, there's so many times where this could be helpful for people, and it's not a single use, which I think is huge again, and where we should be moving with how we make things.
Totally. Sorry, I'm pulling it up on the screen. I got something else on there, but we're loading it up. So
Yeah.
that's a very interesting, that's a pretty big pivot though, from like glow stick to design hub. What was kind of the inspiration behind that kind of a change?
We really wanted to be bigger with our vision. It became to a question, well, what about when we replace all the single-use glow sticks? What are we going to do with everything we've learned? And so if we approach things from the beginning with that greater vision of, well, what if what we learned for glow sticks can also be implemented for other products and to solve other problems? And that is really the vision that we're advancing right now, is can we just figure out how we build a company, how we work with teams, how we can each bring our unique gifts and our skills and knowledge to actually in service of the earth. That's really what we say, is we are working in service of the earth, because at the end of the day, we're going to be gone. So we want to build something that will last. That can be our legacy.
I love that. Okay, so now, so that's an amazing mission, and I love it. It's so big. It's like thinking 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road now, which I think is super rare in the sort of startup sector. What about AfroHub Marketplace? Like, what is that? What's going on with that?
Yeah. So with AfroHub, it was an interesting combination where I was already doing work in the Black community. I was doing a lot of financial literacy workshops and I was working a lot with women. And so my financial advisor actually introduced me to Debbie, who is a professor at BCIT. And he said, like, oh, I know somebody who's also doing work in the community. And that was a year ago, actually, when the pandemic hit. And at the same time, we had the uprising and the gaining strength of the Black Lives Matter movement. And so Debbie calls me and I'm like, hey, Debbie, pandemic is hitting. What are we going to do? And so we were getting the news and updates of so many businesses closing around us. And we thought, well, what can we do that is bringing together our work? If I'm doing financial literacy in this place, well, can we bring it and centralizing in one platform? If somebody else is doing marketing, can we bring them here? And so we thought about what are the stores that are closing, and we had African stores were a huge market that were also having to close down, regulations, plus they didn't have systems in place to move online. And so we thought, well, there's this market that is very entrepreneurial, but they just need support. They just need the tools. Can we become those people who provide the tools? And that's where AfroHub started. And we're still very young in the sense that we're still even figuring out how are we going to expand? How are we going to do delivery? If we're working with dry items, if we're amplifying the voices of business owners, how do we do it properly as well? So we are navigating those initial stages where it's so different because in AfroHub, we started with a team. And from the beginning, Debbie got so many people together in somebody in finances, in marketing, in web design, operations. And now it's more of a matter of working with the founders and solving their problems.
It's so cool, and it's such like very different industries. But I love what you said earlier about it's not about the industry; it's about the ability to build a team. Like that's the core function.
Yeah. And then for me, it's if you bring the same, I think building a business has a lot to do with habits. And I think anything you do in life really goes down to your habits and mindset. And so for me, it's like, oh, can I do something consistently until I get better at it? Or can I reframe what I already know? So it was like, well, I went to school for biology. I did a lot of work in labs. What did labs teach me? And I was thinking, you know what? They taught me to read instructions, to pay attention to details, to make really good observations, to write reports. I think the most important one was like, I know how to write. And I'm like, okay, well, I can write a funding application then. So that's how I started to bring in transferable skills, whatever I was learning. You could have thrown me in art class and I would have found a way to transfer what I had learned in art class. But if my mindset had been very locked in, I took biology classes only, so there's no way I can ever be in a different field or different space. I can't. That's already my first barrier that I need to break. It doesn't matter whether I can or not. I already made my decision.
I love that. Wow. See, this is I gotta say, every time that I do these Q&A corners, I'm like, where was all of this advice? Like when like I don't know about you, but when I was like starting to like look at this whole idea ever in my life, there was no real opportunities for this. And now we've got this wisdom live on camera for people to tap into. So if you are here, if you're on the stream, if you're checking this out, because I know we got a lot of viewers and we have a lot of lurkers. I know we always do. But if you have a question, we got about 10 minutes left or so, a little bit less. So feel free to throw your question in the chat. I'm saving my nice juicy question that I always ask all of our guests until the very end, just to add a little bit of stress. But I'm interested. So we talked about sort of the business side. We talked about the sort of development side, and you started to talk about the university experience. So we're kind of going backwards. when you, and obviously our audience is a lot of high school students. That's what High Tech U is all about. So what did you do in high school, and at that same time, what can people that are in high school now do to prepare themselves if they want to be where you are now? If they're looking and saying, Yamila is who I want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, what should they start to do now?
When I was in high school, because there was so little to lose, I started, were just fun. And that would be in different areas. So I would always go to the science fair projects. Honestly, I would get really stressed out with science fairs because I really wanted to win when I was younger. And then it kind of, I had to really understand that it wasn't about being number one, but it was about back to the skills that I was developing in the process. And so let me see. So I was in science fairs, I was in the school dance, and I was a horrible dancer. It was hilarious because in my last year of school they put me like in the front row dancing, and I'm like, I can barely move, but sure. And so that was so uncomfortable. But what are you what's gonna go wrong? I wish I had done more stuff like that so I could get over my feeling of discomfort. Because now you go to university, and if you want to get a job, you're kind of expected to have like a great resume, whatever. But if you're in university, sorry, in high school, you can just try things out. And I do want to take out the pressure on you, because trying things out or doing things doesn't necessarily mean you have to be the best at it. I think it's how we approach it. More than doing something to be the best is doing it so that we can experience it, and so we can just allow ourselves to experience it. I think it's a big one. Everything is going to be weird. Like if you try coding for the first time, it's going to feel weird because you just don't know how to do it. But try to do like table tennis or swimming. It's also going to be weird if you've never done it before. It doesn't matter what it is. It's just going to feel weird.
It's true, and that's a theme because you mentioned this earlier. This idea of discomfort, like it's uncomfortable to quit your job and go full tilt into entrepreneurship. But do you think if you'd stayed in whatever job that was, do you think that you would be where you are now, close to $1 million in funding raised, and now sort of building two businesses?
I don't think I would be. And the reality is that I think I was just so comfortable before. And me, like, just taking a huge leap was a push that I knew I needed to, like, throw myself in the deep. So I would have to figure it out, because otherwise, if there's always something there, like a safety net to save me, my growth is just slower. And so I was like, okay, well, if let's say I can either work till I get to a position. Oh, my internet sucked. It's my bad internet. I'm sorry. I live
No, it's all good.
bad,
Listen,
so.
we've got so many bright colors that nobody will even notice. It's all good.
Perfect. Let's have a financial goal as an example. Like I could be like, I want to make $10,000 a month, and I could maybe take a safer route and be like, I'm gonna find a job and then move forward in that job, and maybe that will be at university, maybe I'll be a professor, but it's gonna take me like 10 to 20 years, potentially 20 to 30. Realistically, it might not even happen because I still haven't seen many jobs that pay $10,000 a month. And so I thought, well, what's going to be quicker? Either throwing myself to the deep end and potentially having $10,000 a month in revenue in 3 to 5 years. And for me, I'm like, that's worth it, because in 3 to 5 years, I still have time to then enjoy the money that I'm making or something like that. Because I see, and you can tell, like I'm financially driven, but it's because I tie goals with money. You know, I love nonprofit organizations, and my biggest frustration was when me volunteering and helping, I would have to stop doing projects because there was no money. And then I was just like obsessed. I'm like, well, what if I just don't need funding because I have enough money to fund all of the giving and all of the volunteering I want to do in the world? So I just became more obsessed with being financially sustainable so I could continue doing the things I loved, which had to do with giving back.
Well, and I think there's a conversation to be had there that making programs and nonprofit things accessible to people is great, but it's not accessible if it doesn't exist. If you can't afford to do it, if it's not sustainable, it's not accessible. And if it's going to be sustainable, it needs to have something that keeps it going aside from goodwill and good thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm. That was the reality I had to face because it was so tough. Like I didn't even want to charge. Even with Nyoka, I just wanted to do everything for free. I was like, this is so great. Everybody should have it. And it was more of this difficult process of even valuing my work and just understanding like, no, 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 no. Like if I actually am gonna have an impact, I have to be taken care of. The business has to be taken care of. Same with the community I'm serving. So it was all this whole cycle of even figuring out like what taking care of meant in that perspective.
Totally. I think that's, yeah, there's some very powerful messages in here. Ooh, I'm gonna be rewatching all of these Q&A corners just so if I ever need to get like hype myself up, then I just need to watch these and be like, yes, these are the like tips that I can take from this. So we got about 4 minutes left because I don't want to keep you too much later because I know you've been jumping meeting to meeting today. But I always save sort of my last juicy question, which is the one that I turn into like the trailer for to get people excited about watching these Q&A corners. And that question is, if you could encapsulate all the advice that you would want to have had when you were in high school to get to where you are now. So if you wish that future Yamila could talk to past Yamila and say, here's what you should do to get where I am now. What would you wish that advice would be? And I'm gonna like put you like solo on the screen so that when you answer this, it's just like pure awesome Yamila-ness.
Yeah, well, I'll have to share that. I was like, how do I say this? When you asked me that, I thought about Kung Fu Panda. Andrew, I was like, yeah, everybody should watch Kung Fu Panda to begin with, but no, that's not the advice. Because I thought about something that the characters talk a lot about there, and it's about enjoying the journey or learning from the journey and not the destination. It's so cliche. People say it so much. I don't even love cliche stuff, honestly. But it's because if you're so focused on the destination, on let's say if your goal is I need to get A's, because that's the mistake I did, I feel in university. I wasn't really enjoying the experience and I wasn't really tapping into the resources that were literally right there in front of me. But I was so focused in one way of doing things and the outcome that I thought I needed. And so if you open yourself up, I mean, open yourself up to experiencing and to learning, not necessarily tied to an outcome.
You heard it here, folks. Kung Fu Panda is the movie of choice to inspire your entrepreneurial journey. I love it. Jack Black would be proud. I'm gonna see if I can get Jack Black to actually like to respond to this. I'm gonna do some cool adding on Twitter when I put this out, and we'll see if we can get some love. So that's awesome. Thank you. These are such poignant piece of advice, and you know what, things become cliches because they're said so often because they're true. So I think like there's something 100% to be said there. So it's been good, and it's funny because some of the questions have come in through chat and I've just kind of made them seem as though they weren't. But we've had a great conversation in the chat. Thank you to all of our viewers that are here watching the stream. To all the YouTube viewers who are checking this out afterwards. I'm sorry that you weren't able to catch this live, but that's okay because as you see this video and you have questions or you've got feedback or comments, you can put them in the comments below, and we'll make sure that they get to Yamila. Also, if you are catching this and you want to learn more about either AfroHub or Nyoka, where can they find out about those, Yamila?
Yeah, we are getting way much more active on Instagram. So at Light by Nyoka and also at AfroHub Marketplace. And so what I'm really excited for, we are also becoming more active on LinkedIn. So if you're looking to connect professionally, please add me on LinkedIn. I'll be super happy to share resources, stay connected, but find us there. Whenever there's a pitching competition or funding opportunities, we also do share it there. So I think for anybody who's wanting to connect and be in that space, I think LinkedIn is a really good resource for that.
And if you want to find Yamila's LinkedIn information, it is actually on the HiTechU website. So on the same page that you can find this thing at hightechu.ca, you can also get a link to Yamila's LinkedIn profile. However, it's nice, unlike Andrew McLean, which is a very common Scottish name, Yamila is not as common of a name in Victoria anyways. So, but I mean, if you look, then you can definitely find Yamila, and thanks for putting out that offer. That's amazing. So take advantage of this. Like, listen to what Yamila says, follow the process, learn, meet people. Like, these are all such important piece of advice. Yamila, thank you so much. This has been spectacular. I love that I'm now getting to just reconnect with people on camera where other people can watch. It's kind of weird, but at the same time, I think these conversations are so valuable. And I'm so grateful to steal a bit of your evening to be able to do this.
Thank you as well, Andrew. This is so awesome, and I can't wait to see the recording and to hear the other interviews that you've done as well.
Yeah, and so if you are wondering, if you're on this stream and you're like, but I missed a little bit of this stream, I want to catch more of it, you can check it out on our YouTube channel. It's going to go up probably tonight. I might download and post this tonight. So you can check out our YouTube channel. It'll be up under the same name as it was here on Twitch, and you can check it out there. And if you want to check out more Q&A corners, we are filling up all the time. We had 3 interviews this week. Next week, I think we've got 3 interviews as well. Monday, we have an interview with Veronica Best, the director of product for a local startup, Dispatch by Send, with us. On Tuesday, I think we've got an interview with Matthew Smith, CEO of Mazuma Go, a financial technology company. At some point, we've got an interview coming up. Oh, and then on Thursday, we've got an interview with Caitlin Erb, who is an intermediate software developer at a local startup, Workday. So we've got a whole bunch of stuff coming up in addition to this amazing interview today. So check it out. It's here on Twitch, twitch.tv/hightechu if you're catching this on YouTube, and the link will be in the description below. So with all that said, Yamila, I want to give you the very last word on the stream, your final message for any of the viewers that are catching this on YouTube or who are catching it here in the last couple of seconds.
So thank you so much, everybody, for connecting to this interview. Just even listening to something like this is one step further. It's one step to connecting. So don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
Amazing. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thanks to you, Yamila. Thank you so much to all of our viewers. Be kind, be safe, be healthy, and we'll see you next time here in the Q&A corner presented by HiTechU, an initiative of the UVic Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. Bye, everybody.
Bye.